welcome to the second Big Wave Babes inspirational podcast. My name is Delia, and I'm so excited to be here today with Melanie Ezell. So thank you so much for being on our podcast. And can you just start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a mom primarily. That's my main gig. I have a 3-year-old and I'm a surfer here on the North Shore of Oahu. I live here full time and kind of working my big wave game and trying to charge a little bit harder every year. And last year I had a bump in the road with cancer. So I am a stage 4 ovarian cancer survivor. And I'm really just trying to get my strength and mana and power back after doing chemotherapy last year.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we're so happy that you're here and you have made it through that very traumatic experience. And I want to definitely get into talking about that a lot, but I thought maybe we could start at the beginning of your surf journey, because I know you have a really cool origin story with surfing and how you got started. So could you share a little bit about how you got into surfing?
Yeah. Well, technically my first experience with surfing was in Lake Michigan. That's where I grew up, and my brother and I found a surfboard at a garage sale. It was this Town and Country Hawaiian Island Creations, and it had a lightning bolt on it, a single fin, 6 feet, super pinned out. We had no idea, right? So we tried to surf that in the Great Lakes, and we were never very successful. But that was where the stoke came from. And we were snowboarders and skateboarders, and we gave it our best. And then I moved to California for graduate school. And grad school was rough, as grad school is, but I was also in a very challenging relationship. And I kind of found surfing then as my outlet. And really, I moved to the beach, and I remember this guy telling me, if you really want to learn to surf, you have to go every day for 3 months. And I just took my beatings in SoCal and started longboarding. And I loved longboarding. I loved just small waves and the grace of longboarding and all that. And I got in another relationship, which was very challenging, and started a business, a yoga studio. And it just got to a point in my life where nothing was going well. The guy that I married was clean and sober at the time that I married him, and then started relapsing on methamphetamine. And it was really challenging starting this business at 27 years old and trying to, I didn't know anything about business and trying to make that work. And so I wasn't making ends meet. And I was developing an eating disorder. I was this, fitness person. I was coaching people in fitness, and my husband at the time was telling me that I didn't look the way he wanted me to look. And so, I got really heavy into dieting, and I got really thin, and, it was like, this is what I want to look like. But my body started to rebel and go, this isn't the right body shape for you. And when you're a starved animal, you're going to eat. So I started eating, but then I would be terrified that I would gain weight. So I started vomiting. And so it got into this really awful, mental health issue. So I was in this relationship with an addict. I had this failing business. I had this eating disorder. And then my mom tells me, hey, your dad has this genetic mutation. Your grandmother died from breast cancer, and your dad carries the mutation. You're getting to the age where you need to go and be tested to see if you have this mutation. So I went and got tested. The test came back positive. And I remember just waking up one morning and just being like, I don't want to do anything right now. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to go to work. I just wanted it all to be done, except that I wanted to go surfing. That was the one thing that I was like, screw it all. I'm going surfing. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. but I'm going to go surf. And so I just did for a few months until I ran out of money. I was like, just going to surf. And I made a little bit of money from a yoga festival that I put on. And I was like, I'm out of here. So I took my longboard. I drove to Mexico, and I was like still a novice, like beginner surfer. And I drove to Mexico, and then my car broke down in Puerto Escondido, like of all places.
Which is not a good place for car
No,
surfing.
like not for a novice surfer, right? I tried surfing La Punta and just like couldn't. I mean, I was like falling into the rocks and getting scraped. It was just not it. So I was like, I'm stuck. I have no car. I have no friends. My money is running out. I can't surf here. This is the worst. This is like, it doesn't get worse. I just remember being like so anxious. And at that point I had stopped binging and purging because I was like, nobody here knows me. Nobody knows me as fitness Melanie. Nobody knows me as thin Melanie, yoga Melanie, nothing. So I'm just going to eat. So I had gained a lot of weight and I was just eating, like all I want to do is just eat. And I went down to the beach one morning and I had my camera and I was like taking pictures. It was huge that day. I had Zicatella. And I took a picture and I saw a pink surfboard in my LCD. And I was like, what dude is riding a pink surfboard at Zicatella? And I mean, it was solid that day. And I zoomed in and I'm like, I think that's a woman. And I remember asking,
guess who it is.
Who do you think?
Bianca?
Yes.
Yes.
So I asked around and they're like, yeah, that's Bianca Valeni. And I was like, who's Bianca Valeni? And then I started like finding images and videos of women surfing big waves. And this is like 2018, I think, maybe 2017. And I was like blown away. Like, wait, I was feeling like a victim. You know, my life was in shambles, but I felt like the victim of my circumstances. And to see her doing that, I couldn't have put it in these words at the time, but to see that was like, it made me realize that I'm in control, that I can do whatever I want to do. And if this is the point that I'm at in my life, then if I'm staying here, it's because I want to stay here. And it just made me realize that I am so much bigger than my big body at the time, you know. And that was like a turning point for me. It was seeing her on that wave. And I knew that I had a long ways to go if I ever wanted to surf big waves because I was still like basically learning to surf. But that was like the fire. And it's not that I needed to be a big wave surfer, but it's that I needed to surf those waves in order to be big enough in my life. In order to live a big enough life.
Awesome. Interesting. I'm that's such a cool story because now like you probably see Bianca quite a bit when she comes out here and you get, you know, you're like thing that was so far away is now like not as like abstract probably. Yeah,
I call her my spirit animal. So I saw her the following year when I was like, I'm gonna surf large Zicatella. And it wasn't, I mean, to me at the time it felt very large, but big enough that it was barreling and fun. And I remember seeing her out there one day and we were in the same spot in the lineup and she looked at me and she's like, go. And that was the best barrel I have ever gotten. It was amazing. And she called me into it. And then I saw her when I was in chemo, and we've gotten to be friends over the years. And I saw her when I was in chemo, and I remember my iron counts were really low. I was like super tired. I could barely get my wetsuit on. And I was sitting on the beach and the waves looked so fun. It was like solid 6 to 8 at sunset. And it looked so fun. And I was just like really feeling sorry for myself. Like, this sucks. I want to go, but I don't have the energy to go. And there's Bianca again. And she's like, come on, Mel, let's go. Screw it, I'll see you out there. So I like struggle into my wetsuit. I paddle out. I wait. And then sure enough, a wave's coming to me. And there's Bianca right there. And she's like, go, Mel, go. And I win. Cool. And then I got a photo. And it was just like this, you know, my hair is bald. And I'm like, you see my face? I go, oh my God, I can't believe I'm on this wave. But awesome. It was like that moment, like during my chemo journey, it was probably like the high point.
That's so cool. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that story. I want to go back a second and where you said like all you wanted to do was go surf when all these things were falling apart. And what was it about surfing that made that the one thing in your life that was like, this is going to bring me joy or some sort of like,
That's a really
you know, get
good
you out of that?
question. I mean, I think for one thing, there's a community. Like you go, surfers are creatures of habit. So you go to the same place at the same time and you see the same people. And for me, that place when I was in San Diego was Sunset Cliffs. And just, I had this car, a classic convertible, and I'd put my longboard out the back and I'd just drive there. And my friends would show up and we'd talk story. And I felt like these people got me. And I just felt like I fit in. And I think maybe it was the fact that like there was nothing to do. Like we were just out there surfing, having fun. It was very selfish. Like I think I was so focused on like making my business work and making my body perfect and just accomplishment and achievement. And the surfing was like the antithesis of that. It was like, we're all just fucking off and we're just having a good time. And I think it was such like a relief. It was a breath of fresh air. And then of course there's the connection to the ocean. And at that time, again, I couldn't have put it into these words, but I felt like when I was in the ocean, I was in the flow of everything. It was like I was in creator's hands. And no matter what I did, whether I, could barely paddle out to the lineup because the waves were closing out, or I was falling, or I was like, riding the biggest waves of the day, it didn't matter. It was like, this is where I was supposed to be, and everything was moving in the direction that it needed to move in. And it's these, when we talk about these spiritual things, words kind of fall short. So, I'm fumbling a little bit for the right words, but there was some sort of poetry to being in the water that was just this balm for my soul.
Yeah.
And I needed it. It was medicine.
Yeah, definitely. Being in the ocean is medicine for sure. Or like going to church or some sort of like spiritual place. You always just like, that's where I feel the most connected to the world or the universe at least.
And I feel like my surfing, I perform the best when I'm the most connected. And it's not when I'm like, I need to get this photo or like I need to prove myself. It's like when I am just breathing and I'm feeling the flow of the water on my legs and the wind in my face, and I'm just like there experiencing the moment, that's when the wave pops up that has my name on it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I feel that too. Whenever there's a camera or something under pressure, it's like you can't surf all of a sudden.
No.
Or you force it. It feels like you're forcing it, but
yeah,
those magical days are always when no one else is around.
Totally.
It's like, I think the ocean is like, yep, now you're ready for this.
I know. I know. I remember an experience in Salina Cruz where I had already surfed 2 sessions, and then I saw a photographer go out, and I was like, oh, I want to get my photo. Yeah. And it was good. And so I went out for my 3rd session knowing I was exhausted. Couldn't catch a wave for the life of me. Just couldn't catch it. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a whitewash in. And then right as I was about to take a whitewash, I'm like, one more wave. And I got the most beautiful wave probably I've ever ridden at that place. And I just felt like I was ripping. And I get out of the water, like I rode it all the way to the beach. And I get out of the water so stoked. And I look for my photographer friend, and he was gone. It was awesome. I was like, yeah, totally, Mel. Totally.
Yep. Always works that way.
Yeah.
So how did you end up here on the North Shore?
So that first summer in Zicatela, I ended up body surfing a little bit in Zicatela just to kind of like get the feel for it. And I met a lot of friends. I started teaching yoga there, and I met a lot of friends, and they kept saying, well, we all go to Hawaii for the winter. So I was like, I'll give it a try. And I found someone who needed a cat sitter for a few months. Nice. So yeah, it just sort of worked out. And it was like the money part started working out too. Like, I just started getting the right kind of jobs at the right times. And I heard someone say Hawaii, it either calls you or it sends you home. And I think it just sort of called me. So yeah, I kind of did off and on, like winter's here, summer's traveling for a few years until my son was born. Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, and your son is, how old is he?
He's 3.5.
Awesome. And how has that like journey been with adding, you know, because like you said, surfing can be kind of a selfish thing, and then you become a mom and now you have something else that takes up all of your time.
I mean, when he was like newborn, I couldn't leave him for, I mean, like 20 minutes was like max. And I remember it was like October, the waves were starting. He was born in July, so he was a few months old. And I remember coming home from a really short surf session, and like he was just screaming, like blue in the face and like screaming, and my heart was just broken. And I told my husband, I'm like, I'm not surfing again for 2 more months. Like I just need to be with him. And it's been like that, you know. When I get my sessions, they're shorter. Like I'm running home to give him his nap, or I'm running home so my husband can get to work. And you know, my husband surfs too, so we're always kind of like, what's my turn? What was he? So it's definitely challenging. Like I can't put in the hours that I would have otherwise been putting in, but it's, for one, made me a much more calculated surfer, because I used to just go on anything and get injuries, and now it's like, well, I can't get hurt. Yeah. I still have to do my job, you know, no matter what. So I'm definitely a smarter surfer, and probably a more graceful surfer. I think it's really helped with that. And also I just appreciate my time in the water a lot more. Sometimes it's only like 30 minutes, and that's like, I'm really dialed in. It doesn't take me that 15 minutes to settle myself down where my mind is still going. It's like, this is your time. Start focusing now. So it was my biggest fear of becoming a mom, is that it would take away from my surfing. And to be honest, it has. Certainly has, but it's a sacrifice that has been 100% worth it. I mean, when I'm with him, it's like, whether we're just like playing magnetiles on the ground, or we hike a lot. He loves to hike, and we go play in the shore pound. I'm so in the present moment, and I'm so like at his speed, where it's a very experiential world, where, you know, it's touch and feel and sight and sound, and it's so similar to surfing. If I can stop and like humble myself enough to like be a 3-year-old, it's really a very similar experience. It does feed my soul in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I met you like 2 or 3 years ago, I think. I actually remember the first, we went through Red Bull Magnitude.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd ever gone out at Waimea Bay. I don't know if you know this, but
wow.
It was my first session out there, and you were the first girl out that came out that day.
Okay.
And so I remember we were like chatting in the lineup a little bit, and I don't know, that moment just like sticks in my head for some reason. It's so funny because I think it's my first session there too, and I was like, oh cool, another girl's out, yay.
I remember seeing you that day, and I remember being like, who is she? Because I hadn't met you before.
So that was my first time to the North Shore, actually.
Okay.
That trip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And I had like applied at a Red Bull Magnitude on a total whim, like not thinking I was going to get in at all. And then surprised, like, oh, you're in. I was like, shoot, I better go to Hawaii. Okay, here we go. So,
that's epic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. I was like, you know what? My experience in heavy waves, I've had, you know, experience with 6 to 8 foot Hawaiian waves, and I feel confident there. I was like, 15 feet. You why not try, you know? And so I did that year. I did get a couple waves, a couple entries. You needed 3, like it was the top 3 waves. I only had 2. Same. So that put me at the very bottom of the pack. And I was like just so stoked to be at the award ceremony, you know, to the opening ceremony, to paddle out and see the girls, to take a couple of 15-footers on the head, you know, to ride those waves underwater. I was like, okay, cool. Like it was really, really wonderful. And I was super bummed the following year when I was like, okay, I got to take this year off. You know, I'm going to do the whole therapy and chemo and all that. And so this year, then I didn't have an entry because they changed the submission process, and it had to be a wave within the last 12 months.
Right.
So I didn't have an entry, but I'm super excited because they said like, yeah, we'll help you get your clips.
Yeah.
So that next
Nice.
year you can, you know, have the clips to submit to be judged. So, you know what? When this well comes, my husband just made me a brand new 10-2. So I have the
Awesome.
board. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. I've been training like 3 days a week. I do interval training and, you know, been surfing like crazy. I feel like I got my mana back and I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to say too. Like, I feel like that first year, I was like, I only got two, I think that one
We were still
day.
learning.
It was like, yeah, I was like, that was it. And I was like, cool, like at least I just participated.
Yeah,
Yay.
totally.
But now I think both of us are trying a lot harder. And after you've gone through everything you've been through, I've seen some videos and seen you paddle out on pretty much the biggest day of the year. And I'm like, dang, this, like, Mel is charging harder than ever now. Like, do you think that's because you went through
100%?
You know?
Like, I feel like it's super important right now that I do charge because my body needs to recognize that it is strong, it is healthy, it is powerful, it's filled with mana. I mean, the statistics that are very challenging to get out of my head are very real. Stage 4 cancer, I didn't recognize this when I got sick, but when you get advanced stage cancer, it never is gone. They don't cure your cancer. Like my doctor said, we're good at putting it into remission, we're not good at curing it. So the chances of remission are 90%, or of recurrence are 90%. So I feel like I'm in my more time right now. Like this is my more time and I better take advantage of it. And in the meantime, while I have this more time, I better learn how to get even more time. And so I've been like really scared, like just asking the universe. I have this super powerful meditation practice now that I feel like is life changing. And I just like sit in these meditations and I visualize. And then when I'm on the beach and it's that day, I'm back in that meditative place and I'm like feeling just the power of the universe just like coming over me. And I'm like, I'm going to carry this into the water and see what the water gives back to me. And you know, I may not get the biggest wave and sometimes I don't get a wave. But like I'm putting my head down and I'm paddling in a way that I hadn't before.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really, really powerful and really cool. And I feel like that's something about fear that like everyone always as a big wave surfer, people, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared? And like what I've started to realize, and probably I'm sure what you've started to realize, is there's things in life that are way scarier than going surfing. Like surfing big waves is very scary, yes. But there's things that are exponentially more scary in life.
I mean, like leaving my son at an age where he's too young to even remember me, terrifying, right? And so that's the motivation for surfing right now, is like it's my survival. If I sit on the beach when I know like I have the ability to surf those waves, that the training is there, the skill level is there, I have the ability to go out and paddle out and catch a wave right now, or at least paddle out and be safe and not put anybody else at risk. And then to sit on the beach and not go because of fear, well, that's letting fear win. Mm-hmm. And so for me, learning to channel the fear, feel the fear, work with the fear, be okay with that terribly uncomfortable sensation of fear. I mean, I'm like running to the bathroom. Yeah. I want to puke. But I'm like, I'm okay. Yeah. I'm okay with not being okay right now. Yeah. And then to be able to take that and be calm while being afraid. Mm-hmm. Like calm. I always check my pulse. I wear a watch when I'm surfing big waves so I can check my heart rate. When it's under 100, I'm like, okay, you're good. You can paddle for waves now.
Nice.
So yeah, I feel like the fear is the reason for doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, fear, the sensation sucks.
Yeah.
But we can learn to be okay with a crappy sensation in our bodies and then overcome, like push through and do amazing things. Mm-hmm.
And usually I feel like the fear is the buildup and the anticipation with big waves. And totally. once you get out there, even once you start paddling, you're like, oh, I'm okay. I got this.
As soon as I like get into the water, like I haven't even made it to the shore pound yet. Yeah. I'm just like game on and Yeah, it's not nearly as scary.
Yeah. And then afterwards, you feel kind of like a superhuman. So it's so addicting.
And then when you ride the wave, you actually catch a wave. You're like, that was so easy.
Yeah.
That was so, or you wipe out.
You're like, I'm okay.
And you're like, oh, I got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've had some good wipeouts this year too, and just loved the wipeouts. So I'm like, this last year and the year before, when I was a new mom, I wasn't wiping out because I wasn't pushing myself into that, next level. So you're not learning if you're not wiping out here and there.
Yeah.
So I've had some good wipeouts and just been like, this is fun. I'm okay. Like you come up, you're like, yeah, you guys can stop looking at me now.
Yeah. Sometimes I come up like laughing almost because you're like, wow, that was so like, oh God, but I'm like totally fine.
Yeah. I know. You have to learn.
You just trick yourself a little bit.
Someone told me you have to learn to enjoy the ride underwater as much as you enjoy the ride on the wave.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have any like big wave surfing goals this season?
So yeah, I want to surf at least one 15-foot wave.
Nice.
That's something.
I feel like you've already done that, honestly.
I mean, I think it's so subjective, right?
Yeah.
But I think I've made it to 12 feet, but like that, when you see the photo and you're like, that was big.
Yeah.
I see my photos and I'm like, we're getting there. We're getting close. I'm feeling, and I also want to feel really comfortable. This is what I said at the beginning of the season. I want to feel super comfortable at 6 to 8 feet at sunset. And I feel pretty comfortable. So I feel like I've already checked that one off. So the next one is like, get that one 15-footer.
Nice.
And like, next year we'll see what happens. I'd love to be in Magnitude again and, compete in Puerto Escondido if they do the Puerto Escondido Cup, something like that. I think, those are goals down the road.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll definitely get there.
Thank you. I hope.
For sure. The one more thing I wanted to talk about, I mean, there's lots of things, but I want to talk about your book.
Oh, yeah.
Too. That goes along with this whole journey.
Totally. So while I was in chemotherapy, I wrote a book called Weight is Not the Problem. And the subtitle is It's a Non-Diet Approach to the Alchemy of Physical Transformation, because so many times I've worked with a lot of women since going through my battle, and my story is that it was never about the weight, right? The weight was there to help me, and the weight is, in whether you're underweight or overweight, I always tell people the weight is like a warning sign. It's not like if the warning light goes off in your car, you're not like, oh, this stupid warning light, let me shut it off. No, you're like, oh, I better address what's going on under the hood. And so the same thing is with weight. The weight is actually there to protect us for some reason. Like my eating was there to help soothe my anxiety. Eating was there when everything else in my life was really, really hard. It was like, I got this one little bit of comfort. And so the book is about how do we address all of these things that are not food related. And so the very last chapter of the book talks about a healthy diet, which is, we all pretty much know, eat fruits and veggies, and it's not really that complicated, but we don't do it. So why don't we do it? And that's that's what the book goes through. And it's a really systematic approach. It's really like practical, and it's got like spiritual concepts, but it's like on a very grounded level. So that's been really cool to put that out there. And I write every month. I write about my cancer journey, and I have a blog that people follow that's been really a positive experience for me because it helps me to put into words what I'm going through. So I feel like once I can talk about it, then I can really integrate that lesson and learn that lesson and move forward to whatever the next lesson is. So yeah, the writing has been just super important for me over the last many years, actually. Before, when I first started getting into the big wave thing, I wrote for a women's surf blog, and so I've been doing some coaching with women who just need, and a couple men here and there who just need that extra, like, little bit of support. Like, when you look at it, you usually can say, like, I know why I'm eating, but like, why can't I stop? So that's been a really powerful, rewarding experience. I always tell my husband, like, every time I do a coaching session, I'm like, yay, I was a contributing member of society today. But it's pretty cool to be able to capitalize on something that was really horrible for me and then turn it into something healing.
Yeah, definitely. And probably more people than not go through something like that, I would say, almost.
I mean, food is so accessible,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm not the type of person who's gonna like gamble or do drugs, or it's just not me. But like, food, everyone eats.
Yeah.
So we all have our coping mechanisms,
Mhm.
whether it's like drinking or weed or whatever it is. We're all gonna turn. Scrolling is a big thing, right? That's my new thing. It's like, stop scrolling. But whatever it is, when we're feeling uncomfortable, we turn to these coping mechanisms. And so it's like, well, why are we feeling uncomfortable? Let's start there. And then like once we can acknowledge that we're uncomfortable, we can either learn to sit with discomfort, like we're talking about with the fear, like I'm afraid and I'm okay with that, I'm afraid. Like I still have anxiety. But like now I'm like, oh, there it is, anxiety. I recognize you.
Yeah.
We're cool, we can cruise together.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah. So either, being with that uncomfortable sensation or making the changes that need to be made in your life, so that you don't have to have so much discomfort all the time. So yeah, that's
awesome.
That's the book. And yeah.
And what's your blog called so people can check it out?
Okay, so I called it a blog, but it's really an email list.
Oh, okay.
So it's just my name, melanieezell.com. And if you head over there, then the way that it works is like you get one email a day from like all of the cancer journey, and then like as new ones come out, then it gets sent out via email.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
You're definitely a contributing member of society.
Sometimes when you're a mom though, like, oh my God, you're like, wow, I just tidied up the living room all day long. That's all I did was tidy the living room and make grilled cheese.
Yep.
That's
totally fine. That was a big accomplishment, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again. And is there anything else you wanted to share? And
I'm just so honored to be able to sit and talk to you. Like, I know I've seen what you've done over the last few years, and I'm so inspired by it. And Polly as well, is like seeing her. She was one of the first people I met after Bianca in Zicatella that was like charging. And so it's just super cool to see you guys teaming up and what you're doing with Big Wave Babes. And I love that you are building a brand to fuel this thing that you love doing, but also being contributing members of society with this brand and giving back. So thank you for choosing to interview me and spending time with me today.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.